Uh, oh, and the recording is in progress, in case you needed to know. My name is, again, Blair Eig. I am the president of the Maryland Patient Safety Center and have been asked by the Maryland Healthcare Commission and appointed by the secretary to chair this committee. So again, I really appreciate your participation. It's such an important issue, and we all, discussed that at the first meeting, and all know going forward that we want to do something very positive with this work. And as I think somebody said, or maybe it was even me, we need to be the squeaky wheel to raise public awareness and awareness of the legislature that this is an important issue that needs to be acted upon. So again, we've got a large group here today. For those who weren't able to attend the first meeting, in a moment, I'll ask you to introduce yourselves. So we have the people who weren't here the first time, at least will have you introduced. But also, I will just briefly review what we discussed at the first meeting. Again, this is this work group was created by Senate Bill 700 to create a work group in order to produce a plan to go back to the department and the legislature for a public awareness campaign on violence in the healthcare workplace. Our hope, this is an unfunded, this was an unfunded bill. Our hope is that we can create a plan to go back to the legislature, and then this legislative session pass a funding bill to fund this workplace violence in healthcare public awareness campaign so that it can be produced next year. That is our goal. A lot of people have been working hard on this for a while, and there's obviously going to be more work to do. But as it pertains to this committee, we discussed at the first meeting, we had introductions, we discussed the issue. Many people talked about their own experiences in the workplace or those of their comrades in the workplace in terms of the experience of violence, how it seems to be increasing, and that's what the data tells us. We had very important presentations from the Maryland Nurses Association, from the Maryland Hospital Association, and a very comprehensive presentation by the folks at MedStar. We know there's, again, a lot being done, and there's a lot more to be done. But what we're going to try to do today is look at the work that our wonderful communications team has put together to get your feedback on some of the basics of a public awareness campaign. And they need your feedback, your ideas, any new ideas, or anything that you think might be helpful, so that they can put that together with some help from the outside, so that we can come back with a more comprehensive plan for presentation, discussion, and approval to go back again to the Department of Health and to the legislature by December 1st, which means we need one more meeting. I've discussed that with Courtney and Teresa, and it seems the best day would be 3 weeks from now, same time, 4 p.m. on a Wednesday, November 16th. I don't believe anybody wants to wait a week and meet on Thanksgiving Eve. So that would seem to be the best time. That's something to plan for, and we will discuss that again at the end of the meeting. But again, before we get to the presentation by the communications team and the PowerPoint which is brief, but supposed to generate the discussion today, let me ask, and Courtney, you may need to help me with this, who is new to the meeting today that wasn't at our meeting previously? You can go ahead and speak up. I think, Margaret, you are the first one I see waving your hand. Please introduce yourself.
Okay, I saw everybody else's bio, which was great. I'm Meg Garrett. I am the retired Vice President of Risk Management and Chief Legal Counsel for Hopkins, and have been very actively involved in the whole workplace violence piece since especially 2010, when we had a shooting. I'm also the recent past president of the American Society of Healthcare Risk Management, which is part of AHA. And every time we have a situation like we did Saturday with two nurses or two clinical people being killed in a hospital in Dallas, we, the AHA group, again, continue to try to work on this very sad and sensitive issue. Thank you for allowing me to be part of this.
Thank you, Meg, for being part of it. We really appreciate it. And Brandon.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Brandville Bard. I'm the Vice President for Public Safety at Johns Hopkins University of Medicine. 30 years in law enforcement and public safety, most of it in municipal policing in the Philadelphia Police Department. And my most recent position, I served as the police commissioner for the city of Cambridge, Massachusetts. And happy to be a part of this group.
Well, thank you. And thank you again, also, both you and Meg, for your expertise in being able to provide it to us. And thank you for your service up in Cambridge. My son works there, so I appreciate the law enforcement in Cambridge. He's a baker. He goes to work at like 3 a.m. in the morning. So, you know, the forces that you had around Alewife where he works, he greatly appreciated. Anyone else who was not at the first meeting would like to introduce yourself? I think, Kristen, I think I see your hand up.
Hi there. My name is Kirsten Brown. I'm the Deputy State's Attorney here in Frederick County. I am an associate board member with the Maryland State's Attorneys Association. So I was added this last week, and Courtney was kind enough to send me the information about the first meeting. So I'm your member from the Maryland State's Attorneys Association. Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Kirsten, for representing the State's Attorneys Association. That was a requirement of the bill. So we appreciate having you here, but more than just a requirement, we appreciate your feedback.
Thank you very much.
And if I didn't say this before, I think it's pretty obvious. We need everybody's feedback, you know, as much as you're willing to give for our, for our being able to put together this awareness campaign. But it's not going to stop here. We're going to rely on you as we go forward, especially in the coming legislative session, and especially as we hope to roll out a public awareness campaign, for your support in that and your organization's support in that, so we can get the word out. And like I said, be the squeaky wheel so that it gets attention and gets some action on it. Then I think Caitlin.
Yes, hi. I am one of the Assistant Attorney Generals for the Maryland Healthcare Commission. I'm sorry I missed the first meeting, so I am just here to observe and watch. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being here too. And again, you know, looking forward to any comments you may be able to provide us, but very importantly, the support that you can give us all throughout this process. Thanks. And anyone else that I may have missed? Good. So our one main agenda item for today is a presentation by our incredibly wonderful communications team. I can't say enough about them on the what they've come together with ideas for a public awareness campaign. And then your feedback, again, positive, negative, good, bad. All I ask you to do is to praise the communication team for all the work they did. But you can also criticize whatever they have so that we can get the right product out of them. The plan is to get your feedback and then for them to work together on that over the next 3 weeks and come back with a final plan for us to be able to, again, discuss and approve at the next and last meeting. The team that got together several times in the intervening period are Matt Hombach and David Nevins from the Nevins group, which are Nevins and Associates, which have been incredible supporters of this process. Amy Goodwin from the Maryland Hospital Association, and Anna Kerbel, my support, my wonderful support at the Maryland Patient Safety Center. So without any further discussion, let me turn it over, I think, to Matt. And sure. We've got the presentation, Matt. I don't know if Courtney, you want to put it up, or you and Matt can decide how you want to continue.
It's up to you, Matt. I can share my screen or you can share yours.
No, go ahead and share and I'll just talk through the main points here.
Sure.
So Blair, thanks for that introduction and those kind words, and certainly is an honor to be kind of on the front lines of this first phase of this assignment and this committee work. And certainly want to thank everybody for really saying it was a robust introduction to this topic in our first meeting. We're really grateful to have that perspective and really took a deep dive on that, helped inform a lot of us who don't live and breathe this every day. To hear from everybody from their diverse perspectives was super, super valuable. So what we have here is a very basic outline and framework it's a draft outline and framework of a communications plan. Really took a look at kind of the fundamental pieces of the puzzle that you put together for a communications plan with your audience, the mediums that you take it out to, and then the message that you put out there. So those are really the elements in play here. And if you want to head to slide 2, Courtney, I'll talk a little bit about the audiences we've outlined. And this is a simple, straightforward kind of audience that we're focused on here. And number one, it's statewide. It's a Maryland-based initiative. So we want to hit every single county in the state of Maryland. And as we observed and learned from our first time together, folks who perpetrate these types of threats and violent acts, it really cuts across a really wide cross section of the general public. So that's who we want to go after, statewide, general public. When we get into the mediums, we're going to suggest we focus our efforts more towards a middle to lower income strata there. I know there were some specific audiences discussed in terms of folks dealing with mental health challenges, addiction challenges. While we're certainly cognizant of that, that's a little bit of a challenge to target specifically. So we feel just like when we get to the messaging, it'll make sense that, our general public is the main audience that we're focused on. Now, there'll be a secondary audience that will be aware of and benefit, and it's valuable to make them aware of this effort and the messages thereof, and that's healthcare workers. We want them to know that this problem is being recognized, this problem is being addressed, and make sure that our messaging and our mediums are cognizant of that healthcare workers audience. So that's kind of the second tangential audience that we suggest. So if we go to slide.
Well, Matt,
Yep.
if we could, how about let's get feedback, with
Good
each
thought.
slide, so
Yep.
that we can ask the group if there's any immediate reactions and any ideas of additions, deletions, changes. And I see Donna has her hand up, so we'll go to Donna first.
Hi, thank you so much. So yeah, I think I'm really pleased that healthcare workers are identified as part of the audience, because I think it's essential that healthcare workers feel supported in this. They've had a very rough time on the front line, and they need to know that, someone has their back and is interested in this issue. The only exception I would have is for the general public. Identifying middle income and economically challenged, that does make sense. But I just want to give a shout out for the entitled and privileged folks that are behaving very badly. I'll just very quick, I was at my optometrist last week, and a woman in front of me was proudly discussing how she would cough in the face of any healthcare worker that asked her to put a mask on when her husband was a patient, because they didn't realize how much money they had donated and how rich her father was. And basically the privileged and entitled are also acting really badly. So I'll leave it at that.
That's the one piece that caused me angst. I agree 100%. Middle income is not just it. Middle and low, it goes across the continuum, and we've seen it with some of our biggest donors who can be just as nasty. So
and this is Peggy, and I agree with that as well. And just, I would not want to have this issue portrayed as an economically challenged one. Just on the flip side of that, it is not just that, it's everyone.
Thank you.
I
Great
agree,
feedback.
because especially if we're talking about folks that are having mental health issues and folks that are having substance abuse issues, that cuts across every economic, boundary.
Sharon. Oh, you're on mute still, I think.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry. I just want to say that I agree completely. And I don't think we should just pick, we should even identify the different economic groups because it does cut across everywhere. And, sometimes the people that have resources can be real bullies to the healthcare workers. So I think if we don't identify them or pick out certain people, I think would be better.
Thanks. And Matt.
Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Great discussion. 2 points to add. I agree with the general sentiment of making this less about income status. And in my own personal experience and my thoughts are I would stratify this more about entitlement, regardless of one's background, but a perception of entitlement. And also the other group are those with either poor coping skills or poor stress response skills, whatever we want to call that. So I would encourage us to look at it through that lens as well.
Thank you. And I assume Matt and Matt Hombach, that the when we target an audience in a public awareness campaign, we can't get to specifics of individual diagnoses like you said earlier, or break it down, but that your target is the way you form your message and the channels that you use to get the message out, right? That's basically how you choose your audience.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so this is, I think this feedback is very useful in that we want to get it across all spectrums economically or, socially positioned, because it seems to be coming from everybody.
Yeah, great feedback, great feedback. And certainly, the challenge with our little kind of communication subcommittee is, we want to put our best foot forward here, but, we recognize that we have a large, diverse group. We're going to get some great feedback on this. So yeah, we're welcoming any and all comments and criticisms here. So that's very valuable feedback, and we're taking detailed notes, and, those sentiments will be reflected in the next version of this plan.
Yeah, thank you everybody for not holding back. This is what we need. Any other comments? Okay, we can move on to the next slide, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, so again, without having a firm budget number or a full assigned scope for this plan, we want to have a full set of mediums to go after. And whenever you're devising a communications plan like this, at the outset of it, you want to make an educated guess on how to get your message out and what mediums to use. But then as the plan matures and progresses, you look at the results that you're achieving and measuring from this plan, and that informs your future efforts. So let's say, for instance, we take a medium like television advertising, and we're getting great anecdotal feedback. We're getting high numbers of impressions to the groups we want to try and influence, and getting great feedback on the television side, but maybe not so much on the radio side, for example. For the second part of the campaign, we kind of want to pull back on the radio and do a little bit more of television advertising. So that's a little bit of an elementary example, but we kind of want to have our full palette of mediums that we think will make sense to start. So television advertising, we want to do targeted cable advertising, kind of in the Maryland suburbs of DC. Also broadcast advertising in Central Maryland. And I won't get too into the weeds on this, but the reason we do cable in the DC suburbs is because a lot of the DC stations also serve the District of Columbia, also serve lots of northern half of Virginia. So there'd be a little bit of not wasted audience, but we're really focused on making these dollars work for Maryland citizens. So we'd be, with the broadcast element in the DC suburbs, we'd be pushing some of that audience into DC and Virginia. Whereas if we have targeted cable, we can very, very strictly stick to the Maryland counties ringing the northern part of the district. Then on the broadcast side in central Maryland and the Baltimore market, a lot of those TV stations and the news networks are the local news for western counties in Maryland and also on the Eastern Shore. So we want to leverage that aspect of it. We also feel like there's really good values to be had in those television markets once we get past these lovely election cycles where we're all seeing, you know, political ads every other, if not every ad as we're watching the news. So we think that's a good way to go about the radio. FM, I think, or I'm sorry, the television rather, but then on the radio side, we really think an FM radio play, and we'll be looking for radio stations that are willing to partner and really own this, that maybe come up with some creative programming elements or an interview series with people knowledgeable on this issue to really get the word out and go beyond just a transactional commercial relationship. So we think we can shop that around and really get some good relationships on the radio side. As we all know, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube are a big part of all of our lives and how we consume media. So we want to have a paid media presence for sure in the social media realm. The beauty of the paid social media is that we are able to track impressions and the number of people that are seeing it and the demographics of the people that are seeing it. And it also lets us know how many people have clicked on the content or commented or reacted to it and interacted with it. So we really feel like that paid social media will be a very valuable tool, not only from an exposure standpoint, but also from a measurement standpoint, because we know the Senate will want to see results and what we think we've achieved. So that'll give us that aspect of it. So the social media really will give us that exposure coupled with measurement and insights into the type of people who are interacting with our content and interested in this issue, which I think moving forward will be really valuable. To some extent, we think the digital advertising, the banner ads that we all see when we're going to our favorite national news sites, those can be localized with localized messaging and then tailored links to the content we want to share with people who we're trying to influence with this campaign. So those digital banner ads on strategic sites and to strategic audiences, we think can play a big role as well. Again, it'll also give us some of that demographic information and help us see who's interacting with that content. The next one, we have two more I want to talk about, and that's the media relations. We really think that this is an issue that news sites and operations throughout the state of Maryland will get behind and really help us amplify, whereas the things I've talked about so far, there's going to be a lot of hard and fast dollars that it takes to buy that airtime. But with media relations, if we can get an interview on whether it's WYPR or Light FM or any number of TV stations throughout the state, that's going to be hugely valuable to give that third-party validation to this campaign and to this challenge that we're working to change. And we think that PR and the news coverage side that we can generate with strategic media relations will play a big role in telling our story and influencing behaviors on this front. Then finally, this is an item that isn't necessarily a traditional medium in the communication sense of the word, but we think is really worth talking about and exploring, and we'll be really anxious to get the group's feedback on this. But putting together toolkits, whether it's flyers, posters, or giving social content and other tools, social media content to health systems, doctors' offices, medical practices of all types throughout the state, to give them tools to post in their common areas, in their break rooms, entranceways, lobbies, heck, even parking lots, because we know there aren't boundaries as to where these types of incidents occur. So we think putting together a toolkit that, again, would give great resources to those throughout the state working in healthcare, but also that's another measurable thing that we can provide at the end of the campaign is how many flyers were downloaded, how many health systems or doctors' offices downloaded the posters or social content, and use that as another measurement tool at the end of our efforts.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. Now it's time for feedback. Please feel free to comment on any of this, although a lot of it is a very communication experts area of understanding. But certainly any of it, and especially that last piece. Do you have comments, Mark?
So thank you. I love this. Now, one of the suggestions that I have is generationally somewhat beyond me, but TikTok seems to be the thing. At MedStar, we're actually going to be using TikTok videos. Our corporate education department is going to be creating TikTok videos on some basic de-escalation skills for our staff. I don't know what the skill sets are, and I wouldn't know TikTok even if it bit me on the backside, but that is supposed to be one of the bigger venues where information and entertainment is conveyed. Might that be an option or an opportunity for us as well, and potentially something that goes viral and has a bigger impact than what we would hope?
Thank you, Mark. That's something certainly for the team to think about. Anna.
I just wanted to add on to what Matt was saying with these mediums and with the audiences. For those of you who are seeing a communications plan for the very first time, I think when you look at this list of mediums, it does help you to understand why your feedback on the audiences is so important. So whether it's, the economic status, whether it's age brackets, what you all inform us on for those audience categories helps to inform what mediums we will use. And of course, within those mediums, what channels we will use. So again, social media, obviously more for a little bit of the middle-aged, younger age bracket, things like FM radio, obviously for the older generation. You're going to hit different categories of audience based on these mediums and based on the channels. So when we're looking for feedback that you've already provided, but if you have additional on the audiences, that does help to inform us on the mediums that we'll use.
I would just, I want to talk about the television advertising and the DC market. Just FYI, MedStar has 3 hospitals in the district. Hopkins has 1, but many of those workers in those hospitals live in Maryland. So I think it's positive. Plus, if you run something in DC, you get people from the Hill looking at it as well, which also raises, just because of where we're situated, we have the opportunity to do that.
Thank you, Pegeen. And I have an add-on question to that for Matt and maybe Anna. In terms of getting the media relations, the earned media, especially in the DC market, is it necessary to, is it helpful? I shouldn't say necessary. Is it helpful to also buy some ad time on those stations?
My answer would be no, it would not. I think a lot of them are, church and state. The editorial operation is totally independent from the advertising. And while we, at least the way we're scoping this out now, we wouldn't buy time on those network TV stations in the district because we don't want to lose that audience. A lot of the audience is DC and Virginia based. We sure as heck would love to have a spot on their morning show. We'll take all we can get there. So I don't think that would hurt our chances. And we would certainly, while we may not pursue advertising with them, we would aggressively go after them from a media relations standpoint.
Yeah. And so, Pegeen, that may be a way to, to sort of approach that, considering, the variables. Yeah.
And the cost. It's very expensive in the DC market.
Yeah.
Excellent point.
Good. Any other comment? I'm sorry, Lorraine.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Matt and Anna, for your comments. I think when I was looking at the mediums and the audience, I really appreciated that these mediums that you have labeled really focus on changing the larger culture around prioritizing and prioritizing worker health and safety, which is really great. And then the last of how hospitals and health systems can then target certain areas, like we know waiting rooms are a place where people get frustrated by long waiting times. There's more chance of conflict happening. Parking lots, I'm glad you mentioned these areas for hospitals to identify what are root causes of violence or escalation or conflict. So I think something I was thinking about coming into this meeting is how are we also looking at the root causes of why workplace violence happens? And I know there's a wide range of things that that kind of push that into hospitals. We know it's or it can be organizational, environmental, clinical, so many different things. So I just wanted to like kind of bring that into the conversation as well when we think about the communications plan.
So Lorraine, just to follow up on that, obviously, the communication plan needs to be as broad as it needs to be. We're not asking, I know you know this, we're not asking to figure out how to solve the problem, but we were trying to bring up the awareness of it across the public and especially in the legislature, both state and federal, so that solutions can be funded and can be approached. Any more on that? I mean, I don't want to, again, I don't want to overdo the plan so that we go too far in terms of trying to solve issues more than just raising awareness. And maybe I'm overinterpreting your response, but I just want to make sure that, I'm appropriately understanding.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I'm still like we're raising awareness to prevent workplace violence, right?
Right. Right. Okay. Well, thanks. Anyone else? Okay. I guess I should say, if you think of anything within the next few days that you said, oh, I wish I had brought that up, please let us know. You can contact directly to the communications team if you know their contact information, or go through Courtney because she's connected to everybody. And we can always add more information. I should also add that several of you have submitted information to us. Thank you, especially Lisa Tenney, on programs and other data from around the country on workplace violence in healthcare. And that's all been helpful in creating this plan. And I'm sure it certainly will be helpful in creating a campaign eventually when we hopefully get the funding and get around to that. And now, why don't we move on, Matt, to the final slide, which may have the most discussion, I hope it will, on the message.
Yeah, and Blair, thank you for that. And I think just the collective brain power and expertise and experience of this group, to echo your comments, if people have ideas come to them in the ensuing days and weeks, don't be afraid to share even just a little tidbit or thought. It could help direct us in a way that maybe we hadn't thought already. So I think that's an important point. So wonderful feedback, and thank you for the information on the audience, on the mediums. And I would say, as our little kind of communication subcommittee, those first two slides we felt the most comfortable with. And yes, we had some feedback. I think we got to make some adjustments, but we felt pretty strong there. But on the messaging side, I think as our first time together bore out, it's quite nuanced. It's not so simple. And from a communication standpoint, we have too many messages in this draft, but that's sort of by design because we wanted to give the spectrum of what we're thinking. And I'm going to read each of them. But I did just want to give a little preamble that, and Amy from the Hospital Association has been a great strategist from the messaging standpoint in that, we don't want to put anything out there that is going to scare away prospective employees who may want to join the healthcare industry and get into the field. So we want to be sensitive to that. We also do not want to put anything out there that would put a bad idea into a person who's having vulnerable moments. So we really want to thread the needle there. And I think, you know, an overarching theme that we kept coming back to in our discussions is driving empathy for the healthcare workers and reigniting or finding a next phase to that heroism that was touted from the rooftops, you know, from the White House to the Super Bowl halftime show to, you know, everywhere in between, to bumper stickers and yard signs, that empathy for our frontline healthcare workers. So those are just some ramblings there, but I'll read these couple messages and then I think we'll open the floodgates and take lots of notes here. So the frontline healthcare workers who put their lives on the line to help us deserve our respect and a safe working environment. Emotions run high in healthcare settings, but there's no excuse for threats or violence. The challenges facing healthcare workers need to be recognized and better understood. Collectively, we need to be more mindful of them and more empathetic and intentional with our thinking towards and treatment of healthcare workers. The pandemic and a continued polarization of our society, as well as staffing shortages in the healthcare industry, are exacerbating the issue of workplace violence in healthcare. Threats or violent actions towards healthcare workers cannot be accepted as just part of the job and needs to be proactively addressed. And then the last one, you know, when we think of messaging a TV advertisement or maybe even an interview on a drive time radio station or morning TV, boy, if we could come up with 5 tips to prevent workplace violence or, you know, to, you know, respect and appreciate healthcare workers more, I think that would be a really valuable, practical rallying point for this messaging. So we don't have the answers to that one, but we really like that concept of something practical and actionable. So that's sort of where we landed. Again, I'd like to maybe at the end of this come away with 3 to 4 core messages, but that's sort of our starting point.
Thank you, Matt. So now it's your time. What do you like? What do you not like? And what else, if you have something else that you can add? So we'll start with Donna, and then so Donna, go ahead, and then Mark.
You know, I'm gonna have something to say, you know.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you know, I think this looks great to me. The one thing though that struck me so I'm here, for those of you that don't know, representing Maryland Nurses Association. So I feel like I need to be really cognizant of being the voice for nurses. So the one thing as a nurse that I would like to see is the message to be real and honest about what we're actually experiencing. And I know we don't want to scare people away from, you know, coming to healthcare or coming to the facilities or seeking a job or going to nursing school. I understand all that, but I feel if we want to fairly represent what nurses are experiencing and be respectful to the healthcare workers who have been struggling, the message needs to be real. And that might look like a day in the life, you know, to have healthcare workers just state what has been said to them over the course of a day or a month or a year. And it will be shocking to the public because they don't really understand what we're experiencing. But I kind of feel that maybe the shock is necessary, you know, because it has to be honest. It's not that we're just asking someone to, oh, you know, please remember to say thank you. No, we're asking them to stop calling us a bitch because we haven't brought their water quickly enough. And I hate to be, you know, use foul language, but this is how extreme it is on a daily basis for all of us that are working, you know, in healthcare. And so, you know, I don't know where the fine line is between, you know, scaring folks and respecting sensibilities of the viewers and the readers. But if it's not honest, you will lose the healthcare worker audience.
Thank you, Donna. I think that fine line is maybe hard to find, but that's why we have all of us here. It's not going to be impossible for any individual or any individual organization to come up with that. We need to all come up with that, and we all have our viewpoints on that, and that's why we're here and we're open and honest about it. Mark.
So a couple of points, Donna. I echo Donna's comments and want to add also from a realism standpoint. Matt, you made comment about threading the needle. I think the reality is anybody now that works in healthcare accepts and knows that there is violence going on. So, trying to cage the message in a way that dances around it, but says it somewhat, but not explicitly. I don't know that that is, to Donna's point, real or as honest as it could be. That's my one of my points. My second point, the messaging, I love all the ideas and I love the thoughts and what we're doing. My other concern is this does not reflect in any way what the impact to the patient or the people seeking our care, what that violence may mean to them. We do make mention that there's shortages in staffing. Well, the reality is if there's a lot of violence, I know personally nurses who have left the profession because they have been assaulted. So it isn't just, well, nurses are going to leave. It's going to be nurses who are caring for you are going to leave. And that may present a problem when your loved one shows up in the emergency room and there aren't enough people to help care for that loved one. So how do we create or craft messages that not just show the impact of violence on healthcare, but also on the consumers of our services? Because this has significant impact and it will continue to worsen.
Thank you, Mark. And I'm going to go out of order here just for a moment because Candy put in a similar comment in the chat. Candy, do you want to just, state your comment or anything, go a little bit more on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Mark really kind of said exactly what I was thinking. When you have a nurse that's been assaulted and she has to come back to work the next day because that's her job. And if she doesn't come back to work, then they're short. So she comes back to work. And sometimes we brush it off, especially in behavioral health, in the emergency department, in mother baby, where a lot of emotions are flying and we're verbally assaulted and even physically assaulted dangerously. And we come back to work the next day. That has a psychological and emotional impact on that nurse or that tech or that USC, because workplace violence doesn't stop with the nurse. It's anybody and everybody in the way of that angry person. And it has an emotional effect on us as human beings. And we come back to work and we're drawing up medications. The ICU nurse, she's administering some pretty dangerous meds, but she was just assaulted less than 24 hours ago. And that has an emotional toll on that nurse. I think Mark is hitting the nail on the head. We have to somehow help people understand how this workplace violence is affecting them. We have to make it personal. We have to get personal. How is this affecting you? When you walk into an emergency room and you're faced with something frustrating and you yell and you scream and you become threatening, how is that then affecting everyone around you? How is that affecting me as a consumer walking into the emergency room after that person? I agree with Donna and I agree with Mark. It has to be personal. Otherwise, it's just going to be glazed over. This is not a new issue. And somehow we have got to make an impact. We got to find a moment. There's power in moments. We got to find that moment and help people really see the impact that this is having on everyone.
Thank you, Candy. And Mark put into the chat about literature suggesting that it affects staff and their ability to care for patients after they've been through an episode like this. So again, as we keep talking about threading that needle and getting it right, we have to get it right. And maybe we will, maybe we won't, but we need to be able to respond, appropriately. deliver, the right message, as you all have pointed out. And let's go back up to Granville.
Yeah, I think I would echo the sentiments that everyone has expressed, and I think that, we can't err on the side of overly humanizing healthcare workers. We were doing an ad campaign showing healthcare workers in different settings, dropping their children off for daycare, cooking dinner for their family, and like just the message that taking care of your loved ones isn't the only important job that healthcare workers do, and, they don't deserve to be assaulted when they're taking care of yours so that they can take care of their own as well.
Thanks, Brando. And Matt Levy.
Thank you. Very nicely said, Beryl. I agree completely. I would add that these messages, I think, are right where we need them to be. Certainly how we facilitate the delivery of the message. I would agree with everyone on the call that it needs to be personal, it needs to resonate with people, and it needs to leave an impact. I would add that I think it's important that the message has a clear and concise takeaway too. So either as we look at various genre and various delivery formats, there be a simple yet powerful and impactful statement at the end. Something as simple as violence towards healthcare workers can never be okay. Or something that we can carry as a theme throughout the campaign as well. And maybe that's already implied, but certainly people just need to be able to relate all these different messages into one thing that we cannot tolerate, nor should we have violence towards our healthcare workers. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. And so for those that were not here at the first meeting, Courtney presented campaigns from around the country and the world. And some of the most memorable ones, and again, they had varying degrees of in-your-faceness, but the most memorable ones that I think are, "This is not right. This is not acceptable." And I think that's a very good point, and something that we really do need to know and learn from. Let me ask, Lisa Tenney had put in a comment. Lisa, do you want to expound a little on your comment? If you are talking, you are on mute. Well,
how's that? Does that work?
That's better. That's better. Lisa.
Okay. A couple things. And I just love this conversation because I feel it in my bones, just like Donna and Candy. Yes. I wanted to say that the emergency nurses met last night and we were talking about this, and they said, and don't forget all the people from the jail that are being brought in. And we don't know if you all know it, but right now the police, of course, do not want to be seen as arresting patients that are acting out in the community, so they just bring them to the ER in order to have a workup first, to be medically cleared first. We're getting a lot of violent people, and that maybe in their clear state, they may hear what Dr. Levy talked about is the one message that would create a drumbeat, is that whatever we come up with, like violence against healthcare workers hurts them and you and your family member. I think that would help. But I think just creating a drumbeat, the same thing that just goes on, and I think we do have to be real and zero tolerance, and that we're not going to be silent on violence, and that this has created a crisis. I think all those things, and I think somebody has mentioned that the violence against healthcare workers that's published in the literature, that it does have a negative impact on the patients. They're scared when they see this happen. They're afraid to be there. They have to wait longer after the event, because we are taking care of the assaulted caregiver plus the assaulter. Everything comes to a standstill, and we all know that wait times are horrible right now. and that Maryland has one of the longest wait times in the nation, and that this only makes it just brings the place, to more of a standstill. So I don't know how we can capture all that, but I love the discussion that we're trying to make it real here. So, and I don't think it'll scare them away. We've tried. They still come. So
Thanks, Lisa. All great comments, and thank you to in the chat some ideas for themes from Donna, Stop Healthcare Violence, and from Christina. There is zero tolerance. Jamie.
So I was just going to kind of add to the theme discussion. If I'm not mistaken, there's already kind of a trending hashtag called Silent No More, kind of put out by social media doctor who does a lot on moral injury and violence against healthcare. So Silent No More is already kind of established and trending. I don't know if we would want to build off of that.
Thanks, Jamie. And Donna.
Yeah, if I may make a comment on the Silent No More thing. So Silent No More is also a copyrighted nonprofit that addresses healthcare workplace violence issues, but whether or not you want to be associated with that particular group, I don't know. And it is Silent No More is also a nonprofit that works on abortion issues, which is anti-abortion. So Silent No More has other connotations. I don't know that we want to, jump on that one.
Right.
Well,
This is Amy. I think, though, the idea of it to look at what other hashtags, there emergency physicians, nursing groups, there are a lot of other groups that are talking about this issue. And I think that's a great idea. The Silent No More, probably not because of its affiliation specifically with an issue that's unrelated, but I like the overall idea.
Thanks, Amy, and again, thanks, Jamie and Donna. Any other comments?
Yeah, this is Peggy.
Hey, Peggy.
I think we need to better explain the problem. I don't think people are going to get the urgency around this issue. I know we don't want to scare anybody. I get that. But the fact that this has been around for a long time, but it is exponentially worse now. And the frequency and severity is worse. I think that's just my comment. It's like one sentence explaining the situation.
Thanks, Peggy. I appreciate that. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot lately, too. I think we all know that the stresses in the general environment and specifically in healthcare. So the pandemic, staffing shortages.
Don't say shortages, challenges.
Excuse me, staffing challenges.
Yes.
Thank you. Gosh, I have to talk to people, executives in healthcare organizations here.
Shortage.
Amy was very happy you had me say that, I'm sure. And the stresses out in the real world, as we know, even in an election year. The equity issues across the country and in healthcare, and the fact that even though there were episodes of violence in the workplace that, like Donna has expressed, and those of us who've been around a long time have experienced in the past, they've escalated a lot, I think, because socially, the hospital is not a protected place anymore. And things that were happening and now are happening more frequently out in the rest of the world have spilled over into the hospital, where somehow they didn't before, not nearly as much. So
this is Meg.
Yeah.
And I think the bottom line here is respect. I mean, we see it on all levels. We saw it January 6th. We see it in healthcare. We see it in a grocery store. We see it whatever. There used to be a general respect for healthcare providers, including, God bless, my housekeeping staff. And that's eroded. And I really think that somewhere in here, we should talk about respect. And the other piece to this is, this truly affects patient safety. I mean, we have worked so hard, MHA, Peggy, all of us have worked so hard in Maryland for safety issues and Hopkins and so on. But clearly this affects patient safety. And, and that's one of the words that I'd like to see here. I mean, certainly staff safety and so on, but patient safety is affected because of what's going on in the world. And, and it's taking us down. The number of sentinel events have increased. And some of that has, when we do a root cause, is very clearly because of what's happening with the workforce, especially from a violence standpoint. ER sentinel events are up, across the board. But it's, the case in Texas was OB, kind of thing. So, and, just every day there's more data coming out on these things. But I think somewhere in here, we need to have respect. Every doctor's office I've been in the last month, there's a whole section on how to respect our staff. They've already started it because of, situations that I've seen in providers' offices. So anyhow, that's my piece.
Oh, thanks, Meg. I appreciate the patient safety aspect. As president of the Maryland Patient Safety Center, greatly appreciate it. So, a very good comment here from Karen. Do you want to expound on that, Karen?
Sure. I'm the executive director of a small community behavioral health organization in Southern Maryland. And so in our service area, there are 4 hospitals where typically our clients go when they are experiencing behavioral health crisis. And, in some regards, I feel remarkably humbled in this whole conversation, because even though we're the ones with the crisis houses and the group homes and all those things, our part of the world, we haven't experienced violence on the level that you're talking about here from the populations we serve. And we serve strictly individuals with serious and persistent mental illness. But we are the ones that, when we're in the position where we cannot safely serve those individuals in the community, we're emergency petitioning to the hospitals, and sometimes people aren't in good shape. And so, when I think about prevention, one of the things that I can't help but think about is making sure that the emergency workers, the nurses, the emergency physicians are armed with accurate information about those clients that are being brought in. And so many times there's a lot of barriers to being able to impart information on the status of that client. And, it ends up being kind of antagonistic of an environment sometimes, where the hospitals trying to figure out whether or not that individual needs to be hospitalized, or whether there's another alternative. And then we're in a position where we're understaffed too, and having a hard time being able to safely maintain somebody in the community. So when I think about this campaign, I think about the behavioral health associations that do what we do, that work with the community providers, and what we could do together to help prevent some of these instances. So that's my 2 cents, but I do appreciate that there's really an avoidance of stigmatizing here, and I appreciate that.
Yep. Thanks. I appreciate the comments, and hopefully this campaign can be useful in all areas of healthcare across the state. That is a focus, not just hospitals, but across the board. But helpful, with tips and with public awareness of the issues that you just brought up that aren't always the same in each different healthcare setting. So greatly appreciate that. A couple more comments in here for Lorraine. You've got a couple of comments. I'd say one of them concerning the hospitals. We are, obviously wanting everybody, the nurses groups and the hospitals and everybody else working together on making this a an awareness campaign. So hopefully we can do that and get everybody's focus on that. But the second comment you left, I think, is very important, and it is, again, to some of the issues that others have addressed. Do you want to say any more about that? And
I think just like when we were having images or TV ads or things like that, to make sure that the image of a healthcare worker is broad as well. Like there's a lot of people involved in the patient experience. It's not just those in scrubs or a white coat, like they might have a different uniform, like things like that, just to keep that in mind, because even our 1199 members who are custodial staff and dietary servers have experienced workplace violence.
Thank you. That is a vital addition to this. I think we were all thinking that, but again, our representation on this work group and a lot of what we all think about as frontline workers are the clinical staff, and it is not just the clinical staff, definitely not just the clinical staff. So I really appreciate that, and something that we do need to take into account in this plan and make sure that we are representing everybody. Thanks. Anybody else? Jamie, your hand's still up, but I'm assuming that's from before.
Yeah, I'll take it down. Sorry about that.
Okay. This has been a great discussion. I really appreciate everyone's input. And like we said earlier, please reach out to Anna. She put her email in the chat, or through Courtney. If you've got more comments, more ideas that you want to add, we can't get everything in here. We're not going to be able to do that, but this has been really important to shape our message so that we have more to discuss in 3 weeks for the final plan. And the final plan is not, we're not going to tell the department this necessarily, although there may be representatives of the department on this work group, that it's, there's always going to be opportunity to continue to work on this plan once we get it funded for next year. And we all want to be part of that because we all want to make this a very positive outcome. In wrapping up, we want to go a little bit further to understand what, for our communications team as they develop this, what are the direct impacts on patients, families, and the community. Let me turn it over to Amy, because she's the one who's most interested. Well, we're all very interested in this, but maybe you can ask that question better, Amy, to get at what we need for the plan.
Sure. I just wanted to pull a little more out of you. Donna, Mark, Meg, I think Lisa all mentioned really honing in on how violence, aggression affects the patients and families themselves. And I think that's a really good message to dive into. And I heard things about, scaring patients and their families. It takes more time. What are some of the things, when you talk about a communications campaign and you think about the audience, you want to do, it's WIFM, WIFM, what's in it for me? What you either want to go toward what can negatively affect them or positively affect them. What are some of the things you've seen? How does it hurt things? It slows down care. It means they're not able to focus as much on the patient because they're all hands on deck. Anything else we should know as we look at messaging?
Donna.
Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is that a nurse that's injured probably has to leave the floor or leave the unit to receive care and be evaluated, especially if it's serious injury. And that alone, losing a healthcare worker or anybody, a phlebotomist or respiratory therapist, whoever it is, if they've been assaulted, they probably are going to need to be evaluated and take a minute, and so anything that they were planning on doing is not going to happen. And either other folks have to pick up that care and do it in their place, or things just won't get done. And that might mean that a patient, somebody else gets left on the toilet for 45 minutes, literally, or someone's dressing change isn't going to happen, or somebody isn't going to get a pain med because your nurse is down the hall being choked. and is probably not going to be back on the floor anytime soon. And, you know, it's a domino effect, you know, and it affects the mental health of all the staff that witnessed it, you know, and all the patients that heard it, and the patients' families that are aware of it. Now they're concerned, gee, I heard that something awful happened down the hall, and now I can't get a nurse to come see my mom, and they're upset, and it creates this ripple that affects really everybody.
Thanks, Donna. Candy?
Yeah, so to reiterate and to expand what Donna's saying, so my mom's in the hospital. She's a high fall risk. You know, all the hospitals, we're focusing on, don't let people fall, right? It's one of our major safety elements. Don't let people just lie. We need to be turning people so they're not getting pressure ulcers. We need to be evaluating our central lines. And these are the very important things that our nurses and our techs and our doctors are all focusing on. If I'm assaulted, now I'm dealing with an aggressive patient, and these situations take an hour. You know how many of my patients can fall in an hour and have serious injury? You know, we don't want our patients to fall. We want our patients up. We want them to be in a safe environment. I can't protect them if I am protecting myself and constantly having to de-escalate and refocus and redirect anger. So I just wanted to kind of, if you need a little bit more meat to it, that's how it affects other patients and our family members. You know, people fall because we don't have the staff to be with them as much as they need to be with them.
Thanks, Candy. Anyone else have anything to add?
And is it fair to say if it's a family member involved, they'll have to leave, so they won't be as involved with their they won't be able to be there with their loved one?
If I may, we are much more aggressive now with violent visitors. So essentially we try to set limits, identify appropriate behaviors. And if you go outside of those appropriate behaviors, we may ask you to leave and we may not allow you to return. So now that potentially means that your loved one is not going to have the benefit of your company because you were violent to our staff and we've asked you to leave and you're not welcome back. So that there are those ramifications as well.
Thank you, Matt. Mark.
That's right.
Okay. Anyone else? Thanks to those who keep adding into the comments, the ideas, such as Pegeen's Together We Create a Safe Space. There's a lot of, the healthcare workers deserve our respect, support, and protection. Keep the ideas coming. I think, who else added there? Karen added a comment, just sort of some ideas. Does anybody want to expound on anything else? And thank you to Jamie about EMS. They certainly are in that spectrum of healthcare workers we need to address. They do get they do get some of the same violent episodes as everybody else. Anna.
This is actually just a really quick question for Courtney. I'm trying to write very quickly from the chat, but are you able to send the chat to us so the communications team can take some of the notes from the chat?
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
Excellent.
One question that I had, I really like the last messaging of providing 5 tips to prevent violence. And I believe it was Mark who was sharing in MedStar some of the de-escalation tips that they are sharing. I really like that concept. And I also wanted to mention the 2 above that about the pandemic and continued polarization, that, gets at, and same with the one below it that needs to be proactively addressed. These two messaging, I feel like, is more than just for our audience of the everyday Marylander. I feel like it connects to more like policymakers or hospital leadership of like, there's a role for all of us to create a healthier workplace, right? And I wondered how you all thought about that messaging for the larger public, because I feel like those two messaging is important, but not quite for the general public.
I will only comment that the general public is our main audience, and we talked about the healthcare workers as an audience. I think the legislature and policymakers are an audience too, because again, I think we need to be the squeaky wheel that gets their attention so that they do act. But to your point, we can't be so diffuse in our message that we don't get our main point delivered to the general public. So it's something for the communications team to consider as we develop this. So thanks you for that comment. That's very important. Sumitria.
Hello, I just had one quick comment just to kind of sum up everything. So my feedback is for the messages 1, 2, and 5 seem like they are good campaign slogans, if you will, to go along with the theme that people were kind of talking about or suggesting. And I really like the idea of a toolkit. As someone who works on social media, I use toolkits from different companies all the time. So that would be really helpful in terms of a dissemination strategy to get organizations that might not have a communications team, or they just don't have the time to give them ready-made materials to be able to just post, particularly around social media. So that would be like free reach.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? I mean, again, we've had some excellent comments in the chat, which we will take to heart, or the team will take to heart. And Candy and Lisa brought up, the idea of having there are tips available already. We'll have to, use expertise of others, and again, the communications team to come up with at least some sample tips for now for this initial plan. But we will continue to work on that because the opportunity is large, and I think, as several of you have pointed out, including I think the last, Lorraine. That having the 5 tips, something that people can remember, something that they can remember while they're in the situation. And in my experience as a pediatrician, something that kids remember, which I think is really important because they remind their parents sometimes about how they could act more respectfully because they remember the campaign, even when the parents, didn't notice it. Those are all great possibilities. So, question, anybody else? Amy, I guess your hand's up. So Amy.
Sure. I just had one more comment. Lisa and Candy, wanted to make sure you're aware the 5 tips are not about what staff should do to de-escalate. What we're thinking about are messages we want to tell the public about their own behavior, how they should act. If they are getting upset, how they should go take a breath or whatever it is, they take themselves out of the situation, not at all related to how the healthcare workers should manage it.
Okay, so maybe we need to just label that a little differently, because that is, that's a very different spin. When I read that, I read it as, how do we prevent violence in the workplace?
No, it is literally, we're trying to get down to like a handful. Is it 3 or is it 6? When you come to the hospital, how should you behave? And that's for the patients and their families, not for staff.
Yeah. And we all strongly support the healthcare organizations coming up with their own tips for staff, and certainly de-escalation training and other things are ongoing, and perhaps there needs to be a lot more of that. So to your point, we need organizations to do that, but this is a public awareness campaign for the general public, and it is the tips for the general public. Anybody else? This is fabulous. Thank you, everybody. And thank you for another concept statement, Lorraine. These are all great. Again, keep the ideas coming in. We're going to have to hone them down, but it is really helpful. Sumitra, your hand is still up, but I'm assuming that's from the last time you spoke. Oh, thank you. And anyone else? So let me turn back to Matt. And well, Amy, you were already asking questions, but Matt and Anna, anything else we want to get out of the group for today?
No, I just want to say thank you for the candid interaction here, and the things that were verbalized, but also adding that to the chat. Extremely insightful and helpful.
Yes, thank you. I'll echo what Matt said. We appreciate all of it, and we'll have for the meeting on the 16th of November, we'll have drilled a lot of this down a little bit more specifically.
Great. Well, we are time to wrap up.
Just ask Blair.
Yeah.
For the media experts, with it, assuming we did everything that on every outlet, do you have a ballpark on what the dollar figure associated with it would be? I mean,
I don't know if it's $1 million question, but that's a good question.
It's the magic question. And Pegeen, the more dollars we get, the more people will hear it. They say, tell people something 6 times, 6 different ways to get it to sink in. So I think our thought is we would ask high, and if recommend something very thorough to the state, and they can take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should ask for whatever, say, a sustained 6-month campaign would cost this much if we did all these elements. Could we? Because I don't want asking for the money. I just need to be able to justify it, like what it would be spent on.
Yeah, and that is the plan. That is the plan. So we're okay. I mean, you may be involved in asking again, since you were there at the beginning, and MHA is also pledged to support this too, of course. But that the how much is asked for is the state's supposed to have budget surplus this year.
That's right.
So we will ask for more. And
a one-time project.
Yeah, when we talk to MPT, who will be advising us on this, they said you could start something as small as you could do a campaign as small as $25,000. That's not going to get you anywhere with this.
Yeah.
Whether it is 500,000, $1 million, or we're going above that, absolutely. We will ask for what is appropriate based on their recommendations, and certainly, our communications team. And I think Matt will be able to discuss that to at least a limited extent at the next meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Mark, you have a final comment?
Yeah, just one last thing. Is it worth reaching out to national organizations, ANA, AMA, SEIU nationally, to kind of get a sense of what their messaging is? Is it helpful to mirror and mimic what national groups are saying as well? So it's more of a concerted effort to I think Amy said it, you've got to hear it 6 different ways. But if national groups are saying things that Maryland is now saying as well, that's kind of iterative, and I wonder if that would be of help. Just a comment. Thanks.
And Mark, that's a great comment. We did do Anna, Matt, and I did a lot of research initially to look at what other groups were saying, how they were talking about things, and we took what Courtney and the state had pulled together. So I think we have a good idea of kind of the ballpark of where we can go. It's just a matter of finding out from you all specifically, where we want to go with our state, and then matching some of that language. But you're exactly right. We've already done the groundwork for that. Now we're looking at specifically what do we want to say in Maryland.
Great, thanks. Anyone else? So our next steps are have the communication team work, reach out to any of you. Please make yourself available if they reach out to you, or send something into them if you have more ideas. But have them come back to us in 3 weeks. So November 16th, 4 p.m. November 16th, with a fleshed out plan, something that we, a proposal to be submitted again through the department back to the legislature. That will hopefully go for funding in the winter and during the legislative session. That we can have a robust discussion and hopefully get to an approval, so that we've got it in time for submission by December 1st, which is our deadline. Really appreciate, again, the communications team. Thank you for everything you've done and will do. And thank you to everybody in the work group for your comments today. I think everybody got involved, and that's what we expected of you. And we were greatly pleased. There's more, again, to come and more discussion to come. We all have an idea how this should go, and we'll all have to get together to adjust our wants, because it's not all going to be exactly the way any individual of us wants it, but we'll get it the right way. As a group, so that we can move forward. Because the most important thing for most any project we do, we say this at the Patient Safety Center, is to actually move forward, to focus, and to get it done. So again, thank you, everybody. This is really. We had a lot of hopes about this work group and the process. I know Pegeen did, from starting this off for all of us from the beginning. I think we're getting there. Still a lot of work to do. And even when we get this back and go to the legislature, work to do to get it passed. And then after it gets passed, I'm being very positive here, Pegeen, after we get it passed, there'll be work getting it created and then sharing it across all of our organizations. So it doesn't stop just with, our last meeting in 3 weeks. But I'll remind everybody of that again coming up, and probably we'll all be reminding you all when we get to legislative session for letters of support and support with your own representatives. Anyway, do I have anything else to talk about, Courtney?
No, I think you said everything. We will get all of this information posted on the MHCC website, including the minutes and the recording. So we can go back and listen if we want to, or for those who missed the meeting. And I will send that link out, and be on the lookout for an email with a save the date for the November 16th meeting.
If there are no further questions, since we're a work group and not a committee, I won't even entertain a motion to adjourn. We will just adjourn. But again, I greatly appreciate everybody's participation today, and see you in 3 weeks.